Today we're jumping into a really significant slice of Indian history, looking closely at Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
Yeah, not his entire life story that's vast, but a specific, really active period.
Exactly. We're zeroing in on 1664 and 1665, a time of major strategic moves, campaigns that had, well, huge military and economic waves.
And we're going to focus on two key events. The sacks of Surat in 64 and then Barselor in 65. They tell you so much.
Right. So our mission, if you like, for this deep dive is to really understand the why, the how, and the what happened next for these actions.
And what they reveal about Shivaji himself, his thinking, and of course that ongoing clash with the Mughal Empire. We're drawing on some detailed historical biographies here.
Okay, let's unpack Surat first.
Yeah.
January 1664. So the sources suggest Shivaji's forces were gathered near Kalyan and Dandarajapuri.
And the official story, or the rumor perhaps, was that he was targeting the Portuguese or the Abyssinians.
But that seems to have been a bit of a smokescreen, right?
Absolutely, a classic bit of misdirection. While there were forces there, the real target, the big prize, was Surat.
And Surat wasn't just any city.
Oh no, it was huge. A massive international trading port. Think global commerce flowing through it, full of incredibly wealthy merchants, both local and foreign traders from all over.
So, a tempting target. You mentioned misdirection. How effective was that against the Mughals? Were they caught sleeping?
It seems like it worked surprisingly well, which does make you wonder, as you say, about their intelligence network. Maybe too focused elsewhere?
Or maybe Shivaji's intelligence was just that good. I mean, his scout, Bahirji Naik.
Exactly. Naik's role was critical. He apparently did incredibly detailed reconnaissance in Surat, knew who had the money, knew where the weaknesses were.
So it wasn't just a raid, it was based on solid intel.
Very much so. And Shivaji didn't just send someone else. He led this expedition himself, about 10,000 crack Mawali troops.
Why him personally leading?
Well, the sources suggest he felt he'd get better results. Maybe some past campaigns led by lieutenants hadn't quite delivered. Leading from the front ensured focus. He had his top guys too, like Morapent Pingal and Prataprao Guzar.
And more deception pretending to march towards Nasik.
Yeah, another feint, making it look like he was inspecting forts or going on pilgrimage. Classic military strategy.
It worked?
Seems so, because when his forces suddenly appeared at Gandavi, just 28 miles south of Surat on January 5th, 1664, utter surprise.
Panic in the city, I imagine.
Total panic. People fleeing across the river, trying to get their families out. Chaos.
Did the governor try to negotiate?
He sent a messenger, yes, but Shivaji wasn't playing. The messenger was arrested immediately. Same for some observers sent by the Dutch and English East India companies.
So diplomatic channels closed. Message sent.
This is serious.
Very clear message. The next day, the assault began. They went for the city's old mud walls, which weren't particularly strong.
And the governor, Inayat Khan, did he lead the defense? Quite the opposite. He basically bolted, retreated with his troops into the inner castle, leaving the main city and its people completely undefended.
Wow. A major trading hub, incredibly wealthy, and essentially no real defense for the citizens.
It does seem like a major oversight by the Mughal administration. Shivaji knew this, of course.
So what did he do then? Just start looting?
Not immediately. First, he sent a message to the governor in the castle and to 3 of the absolute richest merchants in the city, Haji Sayed Beg, Baharji Bora, Haji Qasim.
The message be?
Pay up, a ransom, or face the consequences. The whole city would be plundered.
And their response?
Silence, no reply. Which, well, that sealed Surat's fate.
So then the sack began. How did that unfold?
Systematically. For 3 days, his troops went through the city, targeting the mansions of the wealthiest citizens.
How did they get the wealth? Just break in?
That, but also coercion. Reports mention using threats, even fear of death, to make people reveal hidden caches of treasure. Standard practice in sacks, unfortunately.
Grim stuff.
Yeah.
Any specific stories stand out?
There's one about a Jewish merchant, apparently from Constantinople, very wealthy. Even under severe threats, he supposedly refused to give up his jewels. Shows the desperation, maybe defiance too.
And the sheer amount of loot.
Staggering by all accounts.
Yeah.
Baharji Bora's house alone was reportedly plundered for 3 whole days. They found huge amounts of money, gems, and apparently thousands of pearls.
Pearls? Wow. And this brought Shivaji's men into contact with the Europeans, right? The English and Dutch factories were nearby.
Exactly. Haji Sayad's place was near the English factory, Bora's near the Dutch. So inevitably, there were encounters.
How did that go?
Well, the English East India Company actually tried to intervene, protect Haji Sayed's property. This led to a direct confrontation, threats exchanged between Shivaji and Sir George Oxenden, the English factory president.
Shows the Europeans weren't just passive observers. They were protecting their interests, even physically.
Definitely. But it's interesting, Shivaji wasn't just about ruthless plundering. There are these other accounts.
Like what?
Well, the story of Father Ambrose, a Catholic Capuchin friar. His place was apparently spared. Shivaji supposedly respected his piety.
Really? Amidst all that chaos?
Seems so. And also, the family and fortune of Mohandas Parekh, a well-known local philanthropist who had passed away, his house was protected because of his good reputation.
So it wasn't entirely indiscriminate? There was some calculation, maybe some respect shown in specific cases?
It suggests a more nuanced approach than just pure destruction. Perhaps targeting symbols of Mughal-associated wealth, but maybe showing leniency elsewhere for strategic or personal reasons.
What are the European defenses? Did they hold out?
They did, remarkably well. The English and the Dutch defended their fortified factories quite bravely. They even had sailors from their ships at Swali, the nearby port, come in to help.
So these factories became safe havens.
Yes, many local merchants actually fled to the European factories for protection. The resistance, especially from the English under Oxenden, was quite stiff.
Did it make a difference to Shivaji's haul?
Some accounts claim it did. That the English resistance, in particular, prevented Shivaji from getting even more treasure out of Surat.
And how did the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb react to this? To the sack and to the European resistance?
Interestingly, Aurangzeb seems to have been impressed by the British bravery. He actually sent a congratulatory message to Sir George Oxenden, even a gift, a jeweled crest.
A reward for fighting his enemy.
Pretty much, and he granted the British East India Company a significant concession, a remission on customs duties, plus a gold medal. So this local fight had ripple effects right up to the imperial court.
Going back to Shivaji's arrival, did he try to justify his actions to the people of Surat?
Yes, upon entering the city, he made a public announcement. Said his fight wasn't with ordinary people or foreign merchants, but with Aurangzeb. He framed it as revenge for Mughal invasions of his own lands, the killing of his relatives.
And the ransom demand.
He justified that too, said it was a legitimate demand in a time of war, essentially making the Mughals pay for the conflict they started.
But the governor, Inayat Khan, neither paid nor fought effectively.
Correct. He failed on both counts. And then, incredibly, he tried to have Shivaji assassinated while Shivaji was still camped nearby. Sent someone into the camp.
An assassination attempt after failing to defend the city.
Yes. It failed, obviously. But what's notable is Shivaji's reaction. Despite this betrayal, he specifically forbade a general massacre of prisoners.
So, not unrestrained vengeance then.
The retaliation was limited, relatively speaking, for the time. 4 prisoners executed, 24 had their hands mutilated. Severe, yes, but not the wholesale slaughter one might expect after an assassination attempt. The sources suggest the citizens were actually angrier at their own governor's cowardice.
And we need to remember the context, right? This wasn't the first brutal event in the region.
Absolutely not. This was Shivaji's response, in part to Shaista Khan occupying Pune, to earlier destructive Mughal campaigns in his territory. And the Mughals themselves had sacked places like Hyderabad not long before. Plunder was unfortunately a tool of warfare used by multiple sides.
So after 3 days, Shivaji's forces left Surat.
Yes, they retreated safely back to Raigad Fort, and they took an enormous amount of wealth with them.
How much are we talking?
The figures mentioned are immense, something like 8.5 crores of pagodas, which was a huge sum then, plus loads of captured horses, which became the start of a new cavalry unit for him.
And then he wrote to Aurangzeb. That seems bold.
Extremely bold. A defiant letter, basically asserting Hindu dominance in Hindustan, saying the Deccan belonged to them, positioning himself as this major regional power.
What did Aurangzeb do?
Nothing. No reply recorded. Perhaps he didn't want to give the letter legitimacy, or maybe he was just planning his next move.
So Surat was a massive success for Shivaji. What happened next?
Well, shortly after, Shivaji received news that his father, Shahaji, had died. This led to a period of mourning.
A personal blow, obviously. Did it change his focus?
It seems he used the time for some internal consolidation, reorganizing his government, and significantly, this is when he formally takes the title of Raja.
Ah, so a step up in asserting his sovereignty.
Yes, and he started minting his own coins too. Important symbolic acts of independence.
But did the military campaigns stop while he was mourning or reorganizing?
Not entirely. His followers kept up the pressure. Netaji Palkar continued raiding Mughal lands. Shivaji's navy was also active, hitting merchant ships, even pilgrim vessels. The conflict simmered on.
And Shivaji himself eventually returned to active campaigning.
Oh yes. Later, he led campaigns himself, sacking Ahmednagar, raiding deep into Mughal territory, right up towards Aurangabad. He kept the pressure on relentlessly.
Okay, so that leads us towards the second major event we wanted to discuss, the sack of Barselor in 1665. What was the context here?
This came after some renewed conflict in the Konkan region. Nobles from the Adil Shahi kingdom of Bijapur tried to reclaim territory Shivaji had taken.
And Shivaji pushed them back.
He did, successfully. But his response was multi-pronged. While dealing with that threat, he also launched a raid south, across the Krishna River.
And Barselor, where did that fit in?
That was the third part of the strategy, a simultaneous naval attack. While his land forces were busy, he planned to hit Barselor from the sea.
A naval attack. That's different from Surat.
Yes, this relied heavily on his growing naval power. He ordered his fleet to gather secretly at his new fort, Sindhudurg.
Secrecy again? And misdirection.
Absolutely. Just like with Surat, they spread false information. This time, the rumor was about an attack on Jinnar, trying to draw attention away from the coast.
So the fleet sails to Barselor.
And arrives completely unexpectedly just before dawn. Total surprise again.
Was Barselor another wealthy trading center?
Yes, a very prosperous port on the Kanara coast. And because of the surprise, there was no real resistance.
So another sack. How did it compare to Surat?
It lasted the whole day, apparently unimpeded. The sources suggest the amount of plunder was huge, maybe comparable to Surat, though estimates vary, perhaps 2 to 3 crores worth. Still, a massive injection of funds for Shivaji.
Did he stop at Barselor?
No, after sacking Barselor, he used his forces to capture several other coastal towns, extending his control down the coast.
Any other interesting points from this campaign?
Well, there's the capture of the famous shrine at Gokarn Mahabaleshwar. Apparently, Shivaji visited the shrine and made religious donations there, again showing that complexity, plunderer and pious ruler.
And interactions with local rulers.
Yes, further south in Bednor. The local ruler, Shivappa Naik's successor, initially defied Shivaji's demand for tribute.
How did Shivaji respond?
Swift military action. He quickly brought the Naik to heel, forcing him to agree to pay an annual tribute and even accept a Maratha agent at his court. It shows Shivaji's expanding influence.
So after this successful southern campaign, how did he return?
Mostly overland, it seems. Karwar, another port town, paid him off to ensure safe passage for their trade. But then Shivaji decided he wanted to personally observe the Siddhis' fort at Janjira from the sea.
The Siddhis being rivals based on that island fortress.
Exactly. So he took a small naval squadron for this reconnaissance trip, but the journey didn't go well.
What happened?
Bad weather, adverse winds, then becoming completely becalmed, stuck at sea for longer than planned. Apparently, it really soured him on sea travel.
Really? After using his navy so effectively?
Yes, the sources quote him saying something like a ship felt like a prison. He didn't enjoy being isolated and at the mercy of the elements like that. An interesting personal insight.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive on Surat and Barselor. These weren't just random raids, were they?
Not at all. Highly strategic. They show Shivaji's military skill, his use of intelligence, deception, combined arms, land, and naval forces. And of course, the economic impact was huge. This wealth directly funded his state building and his ongoing war effort.
And we see those contrasting aspects again, the ruthlessness needed to extract wealth in that era, but also moments of maybe calculated generosity or respect.
Precisely. It paints a complex picture. These actions were absolutely central to his challenge against the Mughals and his goal of establishing an independent Maratha power. It wasn't just about ideals, it required resources, and these sacks provided them.
So a final thought then, for you listening. How did these audacious campaigns hitting major economic centers like Surat and Barselor really change the game between the Marathas and the Mughals? And maybe think about the role of those European companies, the English, the Dutch, caught in the middle, sometimes resisting, sometimes benefiting indirectly. It's a fascinating tangle of power, ambition, and conflict. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
I hope you like this chapter. We need volunteers and sponsors to create content with even better quality and with more variety. If you wish to join this initiative as a volunteer or sponsor, please click the links given in description below. To help us reach more viewers, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biography Central. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. Namaste.